Two gaming news things I wanted to talk about this week. The first involves the headlines you've probably seen, the $100 video game. Yes, this has been floating around thanks to analyst Matthew Ball. He's not a gaming industry analyst by trade. He's like an all-around tech industry analyst. He's had some very interesting takes in the past, some good, some bad, but he seems like he's pretty reputable. I know I feel like a lot of other analysts seem to take what he says. I've seen, articles, journalists and stuff run with what he says, but the thing recently in his newest kind of breakdown of the state of gaming suggests that there is, and I quote, hope that within the game industry that publisher Take-Two will use the unprecedented excitement around GTA 6 in order to bump up the default price of the game to $100. With that, it seems like a lot of other video game companies, the corporations are hoping that that will set a precedent then for game prices to go up overall. This is big shit. That's something to talk about. We should dive into that because that's crazy. Look, in 2020, we already had the $60 to like $70 bump in US prices for games, with publisher Take-Two being like, one of the first people to really jump on board with that. But the thing is that like that $60 to $70 jump, that sucked and people didn't like that. People were already struggling paying $60 for a game. $70 makes people think even harder about their purchase, and any further increase means people would be even more deliberate, think even harder about that purchase, and therefore I think just overall purchase less. So while I think the head executives, the people behind these publishers, of course, they all want to charge more and bring in more revenue for what they are selling. That is literally every company out there in the world. So that's the one thing with this. It's like a report that there are whispers out there in the game industry. There is hope that GTA 6 will sell for a higher price. I haven't heard anything like that. I mean, I'm not really like anybody at all, but I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say anything like that. I haven't really felt that sentiment out there, but there is the undeniable other sentiment of the fact that video game costs, the cost to make a video game is spiraling out of control. And I'm not saying that oh, poor video game makers, boo-hoo. I'm not looking for sympathy for them or anything. I think I'm just acknowledging the fact that there is kind of a burgeoning problem, and you can equate it to a lot of things. People have different answers for it. It can be video games wanting to be bigger, have more content, provide more, gamers wanting more, video games looking more and more realistic, and therefore costing so much more man hours and manpowers to make those things. Of course, then also these are all experienced people that come at a high price. You're paying skilled developers skilled wages. There are other people in the industry who also blame it on mismanagement, with all these things becoming inflated just because of the people at the higher institutions are making dictations to the people making games that are just not feasible and making things take way longer. And when things take longer, it costs more money. I don't know. I look at that as something that can be fixed, or can at least be tweaked, can be sort of a wake-up call. The video game industry has to figure out something, because it does seem like it's just kind of this growing, shaky thing that could just shatter at any moment. We see it all the time with all types of things, right? Whether it was a couple of years back when all these studios decided there was no money in making these big, flashy, expensive single-player games. They wanted those multiplayer dollars. Now we have a lot of studios crashing and burning, chasing the live service or multiplayer game trend. So there's all these ups and downs, and I don't know, it's a mess. But ultimately, like I said, I really don't think players are going to go for any more game increases. I think some people out there, some sickos out there, would spend $100 on Grand Theft Auto 6 because they're like, I've waited so long for this. I haven't bought a new Grand Theft Auto game in 10 years. I get that. But I think for the overall gaming world, every game costing $80 in the US or something like that, I don't see people going for that. I mean, me personally, there are certain things I would certain games, without a doubt, without renting it or playing a demo or something, I would buy into a big expensive game. I'm part of the problem, right? If there was a new Metal Gear Solid tomorrow, sight unseen, I would just buy it. And if it cost $80, I would probably buy it. But on my day-to-day game purchases, a new blah, 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 a new Assassin's Creed or a new blah, 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 whatever game is coming out, I, like anybody, would wait and read reviews and really, really try and see if that's worth $80. And that's when you get back to that whole cost, like dollar per hour, like, you can't get a short game for $80. Nobody would go for that. Some people can tolerate a shorter game for $40, $50, $60. Everybody's wallet's different, right? But once we get upwards to close to $100, I think people are going to think much differently. So like I said, I'm not happy with that. I would not want to see a massive price increase like that. But I also think there is an inevitability of it eventually happening for a variety of reasons. Inflation, the fact that the price of everything goes up always, forever. The fact that video games are also this weird holdout, right? Where video game prices very rarely increase for better or for worse. Like it's always kind of been somewhat consistent regardless of whatever factors out there. So I think because of that holdout, and how, people outside of gaming industry are like, wait, you're selling these things for how much? Like, I do think that eventually, yeah, prices are going to go up. It's just really a matter of like whether or not the world is willing to pay for that. I mean, it's like everything goes up all the time. Netflix just increased their prices again. So you just really wait until like, when is that going to happen to the game industry? People have been predicting it for a long time. I don't think a jump immediately to $100 is going to happen overnight or anytime soon, but we may inch forward over time. I think at the very least, what I think we would see before that is more and more publishers embracing that like early access thing, right? So there are other ways, publishers try to make money. It's selling the game with like a big flashy collector's edition, a premium edition, digital deluxe bullshit, all that confusing stuff. But then also the more recent thing, which is like, oh, if you buy the special version of the game, the extra, $100 version, you can actually play the game 3 days early, taking advantage of some of those sickos that just want it now and have the income or the expendable income or whatever the means to do so. They are within their rights to buy into that. Not everybody really likes that practice. I don't really know how I feel about it, but I think at the very least, I could see more and more publishers embracing that, getting some people to pay higher prices for a game before actually just amping up the price of the game for everybody. So what I'm saying is, again, I think this is inevitable, but I think it's going to be a slow, gradual thing. It feels like a massive can of worms, and I am also coming at this from like a non-financial, non-analyst person. I am actually incredibly bad at math, famously bad at math, but I don't have to do math anymore. So to my math teachers. So yeah, excuse me, sorry. I'm a little sick, so if I sound weird, yeah, but that's what I think about that. But the next story is also equally interesting, but there might be a positive spin to some of it. Hey, now, before we keep going, let's talk about the sponsor of this video. It's Factor. If you're new around here, Factor is a longtime sponsor. They've been feeding me for quite some time now. I got one right here. Here's the deal. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. You can keep some in the fridge. They heat up in the microwave in a few minutes and you're good to go. And most importantly, they're delicious. For me, as the busy gaming season ramps up, I'm reviewing a lot of games. I'm working on my computer all day at stuff. Having to not think about lunch is key. I'm not worried about meal prep or trips to the grocery store. I just have Factor ready to go. Like for example, today I'm eating mushroom chicken thighs and wild rice with some garlic roasted green beans, but they have a lot of stuff. The popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, and vegan and veggie. They have all different types of fun add-ons, a breakfast, on-the-go snacks, smoothies, juices, anything you really need for your own success and just to eat good. Just a go-to solution that's quick and easy, but doesn't feel like you're half-assing it. That to me makes a big difference in just like how I generally feel throughout the day. So if you want to check it out, click the link in the description down below or head to factor75.com. And when you're there, use code 50OnJake to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free shipping. Again, that's factor75.com, and when you're there, use code 50OnJake for 50% off your first Factor box and free shipping. 50% off food, that's a good hookup from your boy. Big thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. So changes at PlayStation. PlayStation may be hitting a bit of a speed bump. PlayStation might be in a little bit of a rough spot because of new reports. Last week, and I'm catching up on this just because I really wanted to talk about it. Last week, it was revealed that PlayStation canceled 2 live service games. Of course, PlayStation the last couple of years has been famous for leaning heavily into live service titles, with many in the works, with us not really seeing too many of them, like the fruits of their labors yet, other than, the massive waste of money on their side with Concord, but then little things that really popped off like Helldivers 2. But the new report is that Sony canceled a live service game in the works by Bend. Bend is the great development studio behind most recently Days Gone. Their community manager came out afterwards and said like, hey, we're still here, we're still working on stuff, so that's good. Hopefully nobody lost their jobs in the process, or and at least they're not shuttering the studio or anything like that. And the same seems to be for Bluepoint, where this report also suggests that Bluepoint was working on a live service game. Not only a live service game, but a God of War live service game. Look, I'm gonna quote my friend here. My colleague, podcast mate, Skill Up is way better at words than I am. He said, imagine hearing live service God of War in a pitch meeting and thinking, yes, this is a good idea. We should greenlight this. And we should get Bluepoint to make it. It, to me, is insane. Sony acquired Bluepoint, and they put them on this. First of all, I don't think they're a studio. I think they're a studio that they're very good at what they do, right? And I think a publisher that owns them should maximize on that, take advantage of that. But then also a God of War live service game, in my bones, just feels like the dumbest bullshit. I would, of course, happily eat my shoe if they made something cool, if they came up with a cool idea. Fair enough. But what? There was the God of War game for PS3, the one that came out after God of War 3, the kind of spin-off one. That had a multiplayer mode, and people were like, what is this? What was that called? God of War Ascension? Was that God of War Ascension? Yeah, God of War Ascension. You guys remember that back in the day? People were pissed about that. So people have been always pissed about video games. But yeah, this to me just goes back to what I said in my first story. Mismanagement. In terms of, allocating teams to work on weird projects, half-baked projects, just designed to around capturing a player base for an extended period of time to extract more revenue from them. Video games, the world of video games, it is a business, but there's always been this fine line, like movies to a point, where you're funding something to make money, yes, but you're also funding creative people to make that thing. It is a creative thing. But in the video game world, it feels to sometimes often dip too far into just what the moneymakers want, the funders of this thing, rather than the creative people. And so just mismanagement from a lot of angles. And then you have things like Sony canceling the one live service game that I think some folks were really interested in, or at least the hardcore enthusiast Sony crowd, The Last of Us Factions. They were making a full-on multiplayer Last of Us game. The original multiplayer behind the first Last of Us was incredible. And then it seems like they actually spent a lot of time and a lot of money and resources into a new one, ultimately deciding to cancel it. Really, to me, it's just figure your shit out, figure your strategy out. And even head of the whole PlayStation Studios, Herman Hulst, and embracing and sticking with Concord for so long, and really just losing all that money, hundreds of millions of dollars in the process. I just question some of the thought processes behind this with PlayStation. As of right now, there's still a lot of cool things in the works, like Wolverine, cool things I'm excited for, of course. But yeah, interestingly enough, as a side thing, you also have Ted Price leaving Insomniac. He was the founder. He actually founded the company in 1994 and was the lead and the head of so many incredible games. The studio is legendary for a reason, and in my opinion, has pretty much for the most part only put out great things. He's announced that he's retiring. He's leaving the company and is being replaced by not one person, but being replaced with 3 people who have been with the company for a while. So I wonder if we're going to feel any changes, in terms of their portfolio moving forward. I think he was very influential. He seemed very good at his job and, pretty much liked by most people around the industry. One time I saw him in real life and was too nervous to talk to him, but that's a whole other story. I'm curious to see what this means for the future of Insomniac. They obviously have a lot of cool titles lined up, but yeah. But overall, just going back to the whole Sony thing and this rough spot with them canceling those projects, I'm hoping more than anything, it's just a righting of the ship, realizing that there is a world for them to have live service in some of their lineup of titles, their lineup of things, their stable, their roster to generate money for them, right? But not everything has to be live service. They should stick with what they're good at. I hope at this point, maybe they're realizing this, with losing so much money on Concord, I'm hoping that maybe they did look at these projects and go, you know what? This isn't going to work. We need to go back, kind of focus back, double back on what we actually do well. I'm hoping that's the case. I don't know if it is, but I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. It's just like a very interesting time in the video game world right now. And I know that this was mostly negative news this week. I usually don't always talk about all bad stuff, but it was the most interesting stuff I wanted to talk about this week. And I'm hoping that, at least this part, the video game prices, that's one thing, but I'm hoping the cancellations at Sony, I hope it is symbolizing kind of a change in mindset. I'd love to know what you guys think, though. I definitely threw a lot of words at you. I don't have any bonus little things I wanted to talk about this week, except for the fact that I am on Letterboxd. That app? Yes. Do you want another app? But this one's good. This one's chill. Letterboxd has been around for a long time now, and I finally decided, after resisting, I finally jumped ship into it. It's just like a place where I keep track of all the movies I watch. I know sometimes I hear and on places, like on the podcast, I talk about movies. I love movies. I watch movies all the time. I try to make movie content on here once in a while, but if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, I just very simply log what I watch with the star rating, and that's about it. That being said, though, I've only been on it for like a couple of days now, and I have been having a ton of fun because I watch a lot of movies during the week, so it's just been fun to jump into that. So if you do want to follow me there, it's linked in the description down below, probably. It's also just my name. Just search Jake Baldino. My ugly mug will probably come up. But yeah, let's talk about everything this week. Let me know what you think about Sony canceling those live service games. Were you, maybe you were someone who was actually interested in what Bend could do with a live service game? I mean, Days Gone multiplayer could have been cool, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Blue Point being misused here. And let me know what you think about the game price thing. Video games costing $100 in the US. Is that something you would ever even consider to tolerate? Or would the entire world economic system have to change first? Let's talk about this stuff. I'd love to hear from you guys. Of course, you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram quite a bit. I'm on Letterboxd now, Blue Sky, X, all those places I post there. Follow me if you want to know what's up. I don't spam. I don't overpost, but yeah. But if you like what I'm doing here, I'm just talking about stuff I love, stuff I find interesting. Clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. But I need to take more cold medicine. I'm going to go. So yeah, I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.